Okay, so let's talk about tests, type checking, and coding conventions. The first thing to look at is this test.sh file. Within this file, we have all of the tests that we're going to run. So the first thing that we're going to do is to run our code formatter. So a little bit more on our code formatter. The specific format that this code base follows is the black convention. I like it. It's a pretty clean and straightforward code formatter. And it installs with all sorts of different integrations. So if you're going to set yourself up to develop on this project, I'd go ahead and set up Black to be integrated into whatever code environment tool you like, whether it's Sublime or PyCharm or Visual or VS Code. So whatever makes you happy. Jumping back to the install, the test, what we want to do, or what we do next in the file is we run the type checks. So as of Python 3.6, there's optional static type checking, and that is done via MyPy. I'd recommend reading a bit more on MyPy and the static type checking, but basically whenever you see a function in the code base that follows this specific format, that means that it's type checked. I really like type checking because it just lets you know exactly what the function's doing, what it's returning, and it makes everything more explicit, so it's easier to read, easier to share, and easier to debug. So it's a little bit of a pain in the butt at first, but once you start using it a little bit, and this code base is heavily type checked already, so it should be nice and help make things a bit clearer to people coming in for the first time. And then finally, after the type checks run, we use PyTest to run all of the tests. I'll give you an example of us doing that now. So if we scroll up and we start our tests, of course we get our source our virtual environment, and we see the code formatter is looking at all of the files in the project, and right now it doesn't have to modify any of them. I just ran this a few minutes ago, so I know all the files are type checked, but you might see a few small changes to what you create if you're not writing code with a formatter enabled in your editor. And then we run the static type checks. If there are errors, they will show up here and tell you what specific files you have to go back and add a type annotation to. Fair warning, it's not the best practice to use type ignore or to stub out too many files, but I guess that's one of the to-dos on this project, is to go remove a few of the type ignores. So if you are in a pickle and you need to get something out fast, type ignore does work, but again, it's not recommended, and too much of it will kind of defeat the point of type checking over time. So try to avoid type ignore at all costs, unless you're under a really tight deadline or have something that it will just be a complete pain in the butt to type check. So here we see all of our tests passing and the coverage associated with it. We're always working to get this coverage report as high as possible due to the nature of this device and how we have to simulate hardware and all sorts of different things. Getting 100% coverage is going to be challenging, but whenever you're adding new code, try to get the type checking or the coverage as high as you possibly can, and that'll just help reduce technical debt in the future and really build a nice foundation for this code base. Outside of that, maybe we should touch on some coding conventions. And the docs in the contributing, I put a few links there. A few quick articles to read are the Zen of Python, Clean Code Summary, and the Code Style Guide for Black. You just have to skim these and get familiar. And these are really helpful just so everyone's following the same styles and contributing in the same way, so that when someone goes to read someone else's code, it's very easy to read and follows the same standard and is consistent. So outside of that, I think that wraps up what I wanted to talk about on the tests and type checking, so I will end this video.